All right, this is my first video on the article from The Atlantic, and I just finished my second reading of the article, and man, I've got a lot of notes down here. I don't know how much we'll get to, but there's so much to say. Having read this, it makes me obviously immediately react on the way I grew up, and I grew up with the extended family. We never had a lot of money, but we had a ton of family. Every Sunday afternoon, or at least 3 out of 4 Sundays every month, I was with one of my extended families, either my mom's side or my dad's side. I grew up with a ton of cousins. Uh, Almost every family within the extended family unit lived within Iowa, mostly lived within central Iowa. And so Sundays were a day where you were with your whole extended family. And yeah, that was great in a number of ways. I loved growing up that way. But as the article said, you are giving up some autonomy. You're giving up some freedom with that. You're creating situations where there's going to be some conflict. And I remember some huge battles within my extended family, some huge causes for conflict and harm. But more than anything, I remember the cushion that we had. We had a support system. We had people who were going to be there, who would show up. And I really get the feeling from that from this article is just the what the extended family can do or has done is be somebody to help you move, be somebody to help you when you're sick, be somebody to help you when things aren't going well. And looking at it, I did grow up being raised by a number of different people, and I did spend extended amounts of time with my grandparents and my aunts and uncles, and that certainly provided me some advantages. And so, yeah, I have to reflect on what my family was like and how my children's life is a little bit different. Um, there are fewer kids being born now, and so I look at my family, I look at my wife's family, and my kids don't have the same number of cousins around that we grew up with. My kids don't have all of their aunts and uncles living in the same state. We don't get together every Sunday. Yes, family is important, but they are growing up differently than we did. And I certainly have to ask what the consequences, or at least the side effects of that will be. Just looking more at my notes here, uh, the first big paragraph that I just thought was really important is maybe 6 or 7 paragraphs down. If you want to summarize the changes in family structure over the past century, the truest thing to say is this: we've made life freer for individuals and more unstable for families. We've made life better for adults, but worse for children. We've moved from big, interconnected, and extended families, which help protect the most vulnerable people in society from the shocks of life, to smaller, detached nuclear families, a married couple and their children, which gave the most privileged people in society room to maximize their talents and expand their options. The shift from bigger and interconnected extended families to smaller and detached nuclear families ultimately led to a familial system that liberates the rich and ravages the working class and the poor. So we look at ways that family has changed throughout time, and there are costs and benefits to all of it. We are freer at a cost. And I know I've talked about this in class before. We have more autonomy. We have more ability to move around the country. And because we do, we have less family as a support system as well. And so, as the economy has changed, families have changed, but don't miss the economic forces that drive that change, and also don't miss the economic effects of some of these changes. I mean, I hope you saw in the article just how big of a difference it made between the haves and the have nots. People with money are better off than people who don't. It makes a bigger effect. Uh, I thought the line in here was really important. The one that said essentially people with money can afford to buy extended families. So it's okay for them that the extended families don't all live in one place anymore. And it's okay to them because they can buy an extended family essentially. They can buy club sports. They can buy tutors. They can buy babysitters. They can buy all sorts of things that help to protect their kids and their family when they need it. They can buy the help. They can buy the influence on their family. And I don't think that I've always thought of it that way, but it's definitely true. I look at my children. My my oldest daughter gets to take cello lessons with Mr. Burke. Both of my girls get to have athletic experiences with a number of different coaches. They take piano lessons from a older woman in the community, and all of these people have created an extended family for them. My children are allowed to grow up in that way because we can afford to give them those opportunities. Um, I certainly don't want to apologize for those opportunities, but this article makes people like me understand that if you can't afford those, society today is not set up to make the family or an easy place to be in because the extended family isn't there, particularly if you can't afford one. I thought it was also interesting, talking about the progression of women and women's rights over the last 100 years, and what a woman really what options they have, and that's hugely important, and the freedom is very important as well. But it has changed society. Um, Marriage in particular, boy, there's a paragraph in there where it talks about, particularly for women, the ideal, the value that we placed for women on being family first in the first half of the century shifted to the ideal woman being somebody who is liberated and who is independent and who is able to take care of herself, with the family being secondary. And the article mentions that being a true trend for men as well, but to watch that change in our society of values. And I think David Brooks, the author here, does a great job at not saying one is right or wrong, just that there's a significant difference. And really to just see the movement in our cultural ideology between we have a family and our job is to take care of the family to our job is to take care of ourselves and be really self-focused. And that really affects how people look at their families. Um, do older people get taken care of by their families now? Or are those families more prone to hire somebody to take care of them? Um, that's just one of the many questions that gets asked in here. I also like the idea of the modified extended family in here. That was one of the quotes that I wrote down. Just that when we went from the extended family, the corporate family, to more of the nuclear family, what people in the 60s had was a modified extended family, meaning they had a neighborhood and they had a togetherness within that. And I think about how lucky I've been in Norris Springs to have that. I mean, being here in this time, in the time that I arrived here, and when I got to start teaching here, there was a lot of young teachers like me, and we really have become a community. Even though I no longer teach there anymore, if you need a tool, it will be found. If you need help on any project, it will be found. The general rule is just show up. If somebody asks for help, just show up. And so I've always had that here, this idea of the modified extended family. Uh, and I realize that not everyone has that. Makes me laugh about my small town living. This is actually a conversation that I had with my daughters just the other night. I told them growing up, I swore I would never live in another small town. It would never happen. Um, and frankly, what I was perturbed at while I was growing up as a teenager was that everybody knew everybody's business. Um, I was a basketball player in a very basketball dominant community, and because of that, everybody had an opinion about me, about my performance, about the performance of my teammates, and to be a common source of conversation and at least something that people thought they could talk about. Mostly I was irritated about that. I thought I would want bigger living. Uh, I don't. I look now, I hope to never live in a town much bigger than Norris Springs because of the closeness. I know that with the closeness comes a lack of privacy, but I definitely appreciate the fact that we have this modified extended family within the culture. Another point I had down to talk about was just the idea of marriage, and really this I I don't think any of you are necessarily thinking about marriage right now, but to see how the ideas of marriage have changed, and just this idea, you basically have to make a choice, and you need to know what the other person is choosing too. Are you getting married because you love somebody and want to make them happy? Or are you getting married because you think it will make you happy? Those are two different approaches. And with the shift in the support of the family and the values of America, a lot of people's ideas have shifted in that regard. And we have a very different approach to marriage. And obviously, as this article pointed out, a lot of people just choosing not to get married. And so I think the beginning of this article is a great chance to pause and say, how have you grown up? What has your extended family looked like if you've had one? Have you had one in some ways purchased, like a lot of my children have? Have you had the neighborhood experience? Have you grown up around grandmas and grandpas and uncles and aunts and a ton of cousins? Have you even grown up in a nuclear family? Or has it been not two parents, two kids, a dog, et cetera, et cetera? So I really like the beginning of this article because it makes you think about the family you grew up in, how it's affected you, and also realize everyone has had it maybe a little bit different. And that has a huge impact on who we are and the opportunities we have and how much we're allowed to fail because we have a support system around us. So, just some early thoughts. I know that maybe more than what you bargained for here, but that covers some of my notes of the first reading, and I hope that you had a lot of commentary about things to say as well.